Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NeuroAlchemy, where science meets soul and where healing becomes multidimensional, intuitive, and profoundly possible. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Young. Here on NeuroAlchemy, we define every term as if you're hearing it for the very first time, because clarity creates safety, and safety opens the door for more healing opportunities. Before we begin, I want to offer a gentle note. Today's conversation includes themes related to trauma, food, self-worth, and emotional healing. Please listen in a way that feels supportive for your body and your nervous system, and please feel free to pause whenever you need to. Today, I'm joined by Kayla McDonald, a writer, healer, and guide who helps women in healing their relationship with food and self-worth through movement, creativity, imagination, and playful inner work. Kayla's work blends dance alchemy, subconscious rewiring, and a light-filled approach to parts work and inner child healing. It's rooted in her own lived experience of healing childhood trauma, eating disorders, and deeply ingrained patterns of unworthiness, and discovering that healing does not have to feel heavy to be profound. I'm really glad to welcome you today, Kayla. Before we dive in, I always like to begin with a gentle arrival. How are you arriving today, either physically, emotionally, or energetically as you come into this conversation with us?
I am feeling very grateful to you for your patience with my tech challenges and just very happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Well, we are so happy you're here. And I'll have to say that using technology kind of it goes hand in hand. We're going to have some tech challenges from time to time. And it's no problem at all. I'm just so grateful that you're here. Before we go deeper into your story, I'd love to ground a few core concepts we'll be returning to throughout the episode. For our listeners, how might you define the following in simple lived experience language? Let's start with body-led healing. What does that mean to you?
So, body-led healing takes us away from the traditional diet culture wellness industry, where the body is often seen as something that needs to be controlled, needs to be overrode, or at best kind of ignored in the healing journey. So healing can often happen from the neck up in many cases. So body-led healing is actually inviting the body to be a powerful part of the healing process. It's working with it, it's treating it like a ally instead of an enemy, and really allowing that to inform the journey of healing.
And tell us about parts work.
So in parts work, there is the higher self, and that's your main personality, the one that has the goals, the good intentions, all of these beautiful things. And then there's often other parts we carry inside that tend to be younger, maybe wounded, carrying old hurts from the past. So parts work is this way of communicating with and helping heal these younger wounded parts so that they work more with the main personality. So there's less self-sabotage, inner conflicts, all those things.
And tell us about inner child healing.
So inner child healing is similar to parts work where you have these younger versions of yourself. Often they're still carrying emotions, old beliefs, and just hurts from the past. So inner child healing is where you bring them into the present moment and notice when you're having a reaction that feels bigger than the situation. It's often an inner child part. So you can start to give that inner child what it needs in these moments. So again, you can move forward with a lot more grace and ease.
Tell us about superconscious transformation.
So this is one of the most powerful healing modalities I've ever learned, and I've learned a lot of them. So what's really magical about this practice is that it works with all levels of consciousness. So the conscious mind, which is what we're thinking consciously, the subconscious, and then also the superconscious, which is the big, vast field of information. It goes back before we were even born, so it can help us heal on the ancestral level. And what it does is it's bringing those unconscious barriers or resistances to the surface so they can be transformed. And that can be anything from the energetic charge left from old events, stuck emotions, limiting beliefs, things stuck in the body, and even old ancestral contracts. So it does a lot to help a person get out of resistance and into a place where they're able to take this intentional, aligned action towards whatever it is they want.
It sounds like a lot of awareness and opportunities for expansion in this work.
Absolutely.
Tell us about food freedom as you understand it.
So, food freedom is about having a peaceful, empowered relationship with food. And this does not mean having the perfect diet. This does not mean that you never have a cookie. And food freedom is also going to look different from person to person. For some people, that's going to be a very intuitive way of eating. And for others, they prefer a little bit of structure, as long as it's the structure they've chosen. But they move through life where food is really relegated to its main place, which is primarily fuel, energy, sustenance, and then, of course, some pleasure and enjoyment as well, but not so much that it ends up being more of a coping mechanism or a go-to that distracts them from emotions and those types of things.
I'd love to turn toward your personal journey. Can you share how early trauma, eating disorders, and wounds around self worth shaped your relationship with food and your body, and what healing looked like in the beginning?
My struggles with food started at a very young age. So I was about 6 years old and came home with some very red flag behaviors. And my mom was convinced that I had been abused in a very troubling way. And from that point, she proceeded to have a massive breakdown of her health. And she was really never the same after that. She was bedridden for a lot of the time, in and out of hospitals, in and out of homes. And what happened shortly after that was I was taken to a therapist with one of my mom's friends. And my mom's friend, well intentioned, was not trying to do harm. And she was speaking to this therapist about the experience. And she told the story about how Kayla came home. Kayla started acting in this way. And then Kayla's mom had a breakdown. And the thing about trauma is it's not necessarily the event itself, though it can be. It's more about what the person or the child makes that mean going forward. So from that point on, I blamed myself for my mother's health. And that was when I started to overeat, to sneak food, to binge eat, to really put on a lot of weight. And that led to the bullying in elementary school. So that was what I experienced from a very young age, feeling like I was responsible for someone else's ill health, having low self-worth, using food to cope with that low self-worth and those really difficult emotions that I didn't have the capacity to feel at the time. And then, of course, that led to a lot of shame about my body because of the bullying and the messages I received about it. So that took me on a very long journey to healing. And it was not linear. I turned to movement and exercise, which definitely filled some of the gaps. And then I did make a lot of progress and made so much that I was excited to help other people on their health journey. And that took me to becoming a personal trainer. And interestingly enough, when I got that job, I experienced all of my old food struggles, my old feelings of being unsafe coming crashing back. And that led me on a deeper journey to realize that it wasn't so much about the food, the right way to eat. It was really about creating safety. And it was really about learning new ways to face difficult emotions and big life situations without needing food.
Absolutely. I know that, behaviors like that are often the body, the mind, the consciousness's way of trying to protect us from the things that are going on that are not okay. And we're often too young to know that. Right? We don't know what the appropriate behaviors are. We don't realize that those things don't belong to us. But it also, for you especially, sounds like, wow, what an opportunity for your journey to be one of immense growth and blossoming. It sounds like everything you experienced eventually led you to this path of being able to help others and enrich other people's lives. Was there a moment or a gradual realization where you sensed that force and control weren't working and that something more playful or body led was needed? What changed when you began listening differently?
There were really two different aspects of this. And the first was discovering dance alchemy. And as soon as I learned what it was and what it entailed, I knew I had to become certified in it. And part of the certification was doing a 40-day dance alchemy practice. And it was really through that 40 days that my relationship with food started to heal in a way that it never had before, and it started to feel playful and light. And I started to connect to my body in an entirely new way. And I started to actually notice very many shifts all around me from doing this dance practice because I was bringing my body into the healing process instead of just trying to think about healing. Because so much of what we actually hold is in our body, it's in our cells, and not even just from our lifetime, but also from our parents, our grandparents, as far back as 7 generations sometimes. So that was one piece. And then the other piece was last April, I was doing some journaling and I ended up accidentally creating this new style of parts work where instead of it being about the inner children I was taking care of, I'm like, what if I made 2 really attractive masculine archetypes to help me stop eating pizza when I'm sad? And I actually got them to come in and comfort my inner child when she wanted to eat pizza, and it stopped the craving. And I was like, that's really cool. I'm going to do that again. And I kept working with these archetypes, and it was playful and it was fun and it was easy. And then all of a sudden, I had gone over 2 months without a single binge, which was basically unheard of for me. So those are really the two pieces. One was the dance alchemy, and the other was still using parts work, but in a more playful, almost book talk style way instead of the traditional inner child healing.
You teach that the body often leads before the mind can follow. How does movement and dance alchemy support emotional release and integration in ways talking alone sometimes can't?
Ask you a question first. Have you ever just had a moment where you were really grumpy or just really stressed and you had no idea why? You just kind of woke
Yeah,
up. And I think
absolutely.
and I think that happens so often for us. And then we'll like try and journal about it or try and figure it out and we'll try to come up with these reasons. And then we actually just end up feeling worse because now we're like looking for the things that are wrong or bad or potentially making us grumpy. When sometimes it's just something in the body that's ready to be released. So it can be really powerful to put down the journal as much as I love journaling and get into your body instead and do some movement, whether that's going for a walk, whether it's dance, whether it's yoga or another type of movement you love. And that's when you'll find I actually just needed to get into my body and let the emotions flow. And that will often shift your state so much faster than trying to like mindset and mindset and mindset. I would forever recommend body practices first and then going back to the journal, especially if you're in one of those I'm just so grumpy and can't figure it out right now.
Yes, I agree. Establishing flow within your levels of consciousness is very important to get things to move, to break up the crystallizations that we sometimes don't realize how much they're keeping us, trapped. And when we flow, when we reestablish that movement, we reestablish that flow of energy, and that often can be what breaks us free. You speak about transformation that happens beyond willpower. How does subconscious patterning and superconscious awareness play a role in healing food relationships and self worth?
So, when you do work at the superconscious and subconscious level, you make willpower almost unnecessary. Because the reason we'll often need willpower to do something is because there's also parts of us that don't want to do it. Or we have these limiting beliefs. This is going to be hard. This is going to be painful. This is going to potentially have some kind of a negative consequence. So when you have those subconscious beliefs or parts or old emotions, that's when you need the willpower because you have to try and override those other aspects. And when you do these subconscious and superconscious work, you bring those beliefs to the surface, you bring the parts to the surface, and you start to create a treatment plan for them. And that can be new ways of thinking, new ways of operating, new ways of showing up. So those beliefs change, those inner parts realize, wait, this is actually safe. Nothing bad's going to happen. And when those parts are on board and the narratives we have about something change, then we can actually move towards food freedom. We can feel better about ourselves and we can really move towards any goal we have without even needing that willpower.
So many people associate healing with seriousness or struggle. Why is play such a powerful regulator for the nervous system? And how does imagination help to soften rigid patterns around food and identity?
All right, so let's start with the first part about play and laughter. So, play and laughter are so powerful for our nervous system. So we have our sympathetic nervous system, which is going to be fight, flight, freeze. That's when we're really stressed. And we also have our parasympathetic. So that's our relax, it's our digest, it's our really soothing place. And the power of play and laughter is that it puts us right into that parasympathetic nervous system. And that's really powerful for all types of healing and especially food freedom. Because what'll happen for many people is if they are way up here and they're stressed and they're serious, they're going to want to get back down into parasympathetic. And you can do that by laughing, which is a great way to do it. Or if you eat enough food, your body has to go back into parasympathetic nervous system to digest all the food you've eaten. And that's why people often turn to food. It's to actually get them into that relaxed state in a more artificial way. So when you decide, I'm going to have more fun, I'm going to laugh more, I'm going to play more, you automatically spend more time in your parasympathetic nervous system. And the other reason this is so powerful is because if we look at healing and growth as a chore and an obligation, and it's going to be hard, we're not going to want to do it. We're going to have more resistance to it. But if it's something we actually look forward to, that changes everything. And then in terms of imagination for helping with food and this part of our lives, we can get into this place where changing our habits around food is boring. It's that chore almost. Because in order to make consistent progress in these areas, it is often about consistency, and consistency can feel very boring and mundane. And our brains like to look for novelty. So that's why I like to use the power of imagination and these archetypes to turn the food freedom journey not into this, oh, here I go again, putting in the reps, doing the things, but this gets to be a fun adventure. And you actually get to turn it into more of a story instead of just this like habit stack. So that's why imagination can really work so powerfully here.
I always love to say, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it.
I love that.
From your perspective, how does food become a mirror for safety, intuition, and worth?
So, food can often become a stand in for all of those things, especially safety. So, that was definitely my experience and one that I find for many of my clients as well, where from a very young age, food was the constant. Food was the thing I could turn to in order to get into that more regulated nervous system state. So, until someone can create these new ways of feeling safe, food will often become that stand in. And if we don't have that initial safety one way or the other, it's very hard to be connected to our intuition. And it's also hard to even have that clear grasp on our own self worth.
What's different about approaching food freedom as a spiritual and embodied path rather than a rules based one?
It's really looking at this journey not as something to be fixed, something that's broken, something you need to control or willpower yourself into changing. But it's looking at how is food and my relationship with it a really powerful spiritual teacher? Because there are so many divine assignments you can find in your struggles with food. And some of the ones I found are reclaiming self worth. They can often be reclaiming the divine feminine for so many women because we live in a very masculine, rules, linear world. It can really be about learning to trust life and to let go of some of the control. So, this is the main way I really see it. It's as this is not a problem. This is like a really powerful classroom where we can grow and transform and really become the most alive and happy and embodied versions of ourselves.
For listeners who want something tangible to explore, is there one simple, playful practice you'd invite them to try over the next week? Something that maybe supports curiosity, embodiment, or gentleness around food or self connection?
I would recommend them to dance to at least 3 songs every morning. And they can be any songs that they feel called to, and they don't need to like find some fancy choreo. It's really about letting their body move how it wants to move and just noticing what sensations come up in the body as a result. And if they did it for 40 days, that would be even more profound because then you can really start to see the shifts of showing up for your body, showing up for presence on that consistent basis.
As we begin to close, what do you most hope listeners walk away with after hearing our conversation today?
I really love what you said. If it's not fun, you don't have to do it. And there's always a way to make it fun. And fun does not mean that it's not effective. In fact, fun often makes things even more effective.
Kayla, thank you so much for sharing your story, your creativity, and the reminder that healing can feel light, playful, and deeply kind. For our listeners, if something you heard today resonated with you, or you think this conversation could support a friend or a loved one, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share the show. It truly helps these conversations reach the people who need them the most. This is NeuroAlchemy, and I'm Dr. Sarah Young. And until next time, take gentle care of your mind, your body, and your inner world. Bye, everyone.